All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Incredible daf ahead of us today. Beginning by thanking our sponsors, our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Adar, Paul and Kathy Pollack, for dedicating all the shiurim and drashos this month in memory of Paul's grandparents, Dina Bas Pesach and Zechariah ben Zechariah. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamas will have an aliyah and the family a nechama. And we thank our Daf Yomi sponsors for Arvei Pesachim, Maishi and Chavi Abramson, for dedicating the parak. In the Schus of Refuah Shlema for Daniel Meir Ben Chana, we hope that he, together with Kol Chol Yisrael, will have a complete and enduring refuah. We'll say with that, let us begin. Really, a lot of incredibly exciting Gemara ahead of us today. Today's daf is Kuf Daled 104, and we are picking up in Meretz Hashem at 103b. So remember again, let's actually pick up. We got a little bit further, but let's pick up at the period on Kuf Gimel Amud Beis 103b to 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 lines off from the bottom. Again, we did some of this already, but let's quickly review and chazar the story. So remember again, this is picking back up in the story of Rav Huna Bar Yehuda, who went to the house of Rava. So Rav Huna Bar Yehuda went to the house of Rava, and now it's Havdalah time. So let's pick up. So it says the Gemara very quickly, Kimat Avduleh, when it was time to make Havdalah. So kam shamei va'adlik avuka mishraga. So the servant of Rava got up and lit a Havdalah candle from a torch. Right? Go ahead and made it va'adlik avuka mishraga, or he lit a torch from the candle. So Amarle lama lecha kulihai. So he said, "Why? I don't understand why are you doing this? Haman chashraga. There's a candle right here. Why do you have to go ahead and light a torch?" Let's remember again halachic. We've seen a candle and a torch. A candle is 1 wick. A torch and avuka is 2 wicks, 2 or more wicks. Amrle, Shama midaite din avshekavit. So Rabbi said, you know what, it's not a big deal. The Sham just did this on his own. He just decided he wanted to light a wick. So to which Rav Huna Bar Yehuda said, come on, that's not true. Amrle, ilo shmir leminei demar lo hava avid. If he wouldn't have heard it from you, Rava, he wouldn't have done it. Amrle, to which Rava responds, you're right. Lo savar lemar avuka la'avdallah mitzvah min ha'muvchar. Do you not hold the idea that avuka for Avdallah is a mitzvah min ha'muvchar? That ultimately, again, the use of a torch for Havdalah is halachically preferable. So we'll say, so why is it? You know what? I meant to actually send this. I don't think I ended up sending it. No, I didn't send it, but I'll read it to you. So I'll say, so this is the Shulchan Aruch, Simin Reish Tzadik Ches Sif Beis. Write down this Maramokam because it's a good one. So the Shulchan Aruch says, Mitzvah min ha'muvchar levarich al ha'avuka. It is a mitzvah min ha'muvchar. It's preferable to go ahead and use a torch for Havdalah. V'yesh misha omer, shim'in lo avuka, tzarech lahadlik ner acher letzarech Havdalah, chutz mi'aner ha'miyuchal lahayir abayis. Others explain that if you don't have an avuka, so 2 things. First of all, we'll say for Havdalah, it is preferable to use a special fire. In other words, different than one that you've used to go ahead and illuminate your home. What also some glean from the statement of the Shulchan Aruch is, if you don't have an avuka, you could also use 2 candles and bring them together. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why is there a din ultimately again in the use of an avuka? So the Mishnah Berurah says, Sha'ora Rav. Ultimately again, because its light is significant. That's all. We'll say, remember again, on Havdalah, the primary symbolism ultimately is the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created light. So therefore again, an avuka obviously emits more light. Therefore, it's a mitzvah min ha'muvchar. That's all. Now again, if you don't have an avuka, you could use 2 candles and bring them together. And again, if you don't have 2 candles, you only have 1 candle, you could use 1 candle as well. But mitzvah min ha'muvchar, to go ahead and use an avuka. Pasach va'amar, so we'll say now watch this. So now Rava begins to make Havdalah. So what's Rava's Havdalah? Pasach va'amar ha'mavdil ben kodesh l'chol. So he who makes a distinction between kodesh and chol, sanctified and unsanctified, bein or lechoshech, between light and darkness, bein Yisrael la'abim, Klal Yisrael and the Jewish people, bein Yom HaShvi l'sheish yemei ha'masa, between Shabbos and the other 6 days of creation. So we'll say, so this was Rava's Havdalah. We'll say, just before we even go on, isn't it incredible? Isn't it incredible to think that we use the same Havdalah as Rava? You know, we'll say, I often find that so many times people want to innovate and adapt and modify Yiddishkeit for this and for that. And of course, the beauty of Yiddishkeit is the ability of halacha to adapt to new circumstances. We've certainly seen that throughout the year of the pandemic. Fascinating piskei halacha that have come out that have never before been part of the halachic process. I will say, but part of the beauty is being the same. Right? Part of the beauty is that I get to say the same Havdalah as Rava. That when there's Tchias HaMesim, and we're invited over to Rava's house for Shalosh Shudis, and we sing together, and then we daven Ma'ariv together, and we make Havdalah, and Rava says Havdalah, for us, it's going to be the same Havdalah. It's going to be, I'm going to Rabbi Yitzchok's house for Shalosh Shudis, then I'm going to go to Rava. But again, I'll say, but isn't that absolutely incredible? Isn't that absolutely amazing? So the Gemara says, Amarle, Lama L'cha Kulei Hain. So I will say, so remember, Rabbi Huna Bar Yehuda is there. He says, why do you need all this? Why do you have to do all of these mafdils? So says the Gemara, after all, V'ha'amar Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, Hamavdil ben Kodesh Shechol, Areizu Havdalah, so show Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. You know what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's Havdalah was? Hamavdil ben Kodesh Shechol, Agotevach. That's all. That's all. You don't need all of these mavdils. Again, it's very nice, but is it really necessary? Amrle, to which Rabbi responded, Amrle, Anakahas Svirali. I hold like this other opinion. Amar Boshia, Hapoches lo yifchos migimel, va'mosif lo yosef al zayin. Bosi, listen to this. So I hold Rabbi's like this other opinion that says, when making Havdalah, one should include at least 3 Havdalos. When I say 3 Havdalos, 3 remember, Havdalah means to distinguish. So you should go ahead and include at least 3 statements of distinguishment, right? And Va'mosif lo Yosef al Zayin. But you shouldn't do more than 7. So in formal Havdalah, there should be no less than 3 Havdalos, 3 statements of distinguishing, no more than 7. Amarle, to which again, I keep on forgetting it. To Trafuna Bar Yehuda says, okay, V'hamar lo tlasa amar v'lo sheva amar. So he says to him, Rava, that's fine, except you said 4. Right? You said 4. Right? Hamavdil ben kol b'shechol, ben or lechoshech, ben Yisrael la'amim, ben yoashi l'sheishes amasa. That's 4. So I don't understand. In other words, according to the statement you just made, kind of is either 3 or 7. I would expect you to. Why do you come out at 4? So says the Gemara. Listen to this. Amarle Ivra ben yoashi l'sheishes amasa me'in chasimehi. The truth is, the last one of Ben Yom HaShvi'i, l'sheish Yismei HaMasa, he distinguishes between Shabbos and the 6 days of creation, is not really a separate statement of Havdalah, but rather that's an extension of the Chasima. Remember, I'm going to both say, what's the Chasima of Havdalah? We're going to discuss that. But Baruch Atah Hashem HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. So that statement of Mavdil ben Yom HaShvi'i l'sheish Yismei HaMasa is really considered to be an extension of the conclusion. So it's not reckoned as a separate statement of Havdalah, but rather is reckoned as an extension of the Chasima. Now, why is that important to us? Says the Gemara, here's why. V'amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Hamavdil Sorach Shior Me'ina Chasima. When you make Havdalah, when you make Havdalah, you have to say Me'ina Chasima Samuch L'Chasimasa. So we'll say, we're getting now interesting discussion. This is a little bit more of like a brachas discussion about how brachos are supposed to be structured. See, interestingly enough, Shmuel says that when making a bracha, especially a prolonged bracha, longer bracha, right before you conclude the bracha, there has to be a statement which captures the essence of the concluding bracha. So, for example, for Havdalah purposes, if you're going to end off by saying Baruch Atah Hashem Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, you want to say a statement right before that captures the essence of that bracha. So, according to Rava, that would have been Ben Yom HaShvi'i l'sheish Yismei HaMasa. Because still on this website, that statement of Ben Yom HaShvi'i l'sheish Yismei HaMasa between 7th day and the other 6 days of dynamic activity is kind of the same thing as Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. So that's what's called Me'in HaChasima, a statement that captures the essence of the concluding bracha, Samuch L'Chasimaso, right before the actual concluding bracha. Upumpedisai Amri, the Pumpedisans used to say, Me'in Pesichos and Samuch L'Chasimaso. And they said, no. Right before you end the bracha, right before the concluding bracha, you have to say a statement which captures the opening of the bracha. Suppose to see here what's happening over here. Does the last line of the bracha, before the concluding bracha, does it have to be a restatement of the ending bracha or a restatement of the opening part of the bracha? So this is a machlokes, or we'll say just in structure of brachas. So my ben Arabah say, what's the practical difference in these two opinions? I'll tell you, here's the difference. Ika benayu Yom Tov shechalios achar Shabbos. We'll say once again, the nafkamina will be a Yom Tiv, where Yom Tov falls out on Matzei Shabbos. The chasminon bein kodesh lekodesh. Right, the boss say we're going to have this. Right, in 3 weeks from this Matzei Shabbos. 3 weeks from this? Yeah, 3 weeks from this Matzei Shabbos. When we are zochet to be b'shatol matzlachos at the Leil HaSeder, we're going to make. We know Yaknahaz. Yaknahaz, very exciting. So we're going to finish Havdalah, and Havdalah is going to be bein kodesh lekodesh. Right, because again, it's not being kodesh l'chol. It's been between the kedusha of Shabbos, kedusha of Yom Tiv, to which the Gemara says, listen to this. Saman da amar me'in pesichasan samoch lechasimasan. So we'll say, so ultimately, again, according to the opinion who says, then normally in a bracha of Havdalah, you're going to go ahead and say a concluding statement which reflects the opening of the bracha, right prior to the conclusion of the bracha. Lo ba'i lemeimar ben kedusha Shabbos to kedusha Yom Tov hivdalta. There is no need to go ahead and say the statement of between the kedusha of Shabbos and the kedusha of Yom Tov you distinguished. Uman da amar me'in chasimasan samoch lechasimasan. But I will say, according to the opinion who says no, right before you conclude the bracha, you have to say a statement which reflects the reality of the concluding bracha. Ba'i lemeimar ben kedusha Shabbos the kedusha Yom Tov hivdalta. You have to recite that last statement of between the kedusha of Shabbos and the kedusha of Yom Tov. You have distinguished. And I will say that is in fact how we paskin. Right before the concluding bracha of Hamavdil ben Kodesh leKodesh, we recite that line. Ben Kedusha Shabbos leKedusha Yom Tov Hivdalta. So we'll say that's towards the end. So the idea over here is, so again, just a machlokes about the structure of Havdalah. And we're going to see, we'll touch on this. It's not just by Havdalah, it's potentially by other brachas as well. That last line of the bracha, does it have to go ahead and capture the essence of the concluding bracha, or does it have to somehow capture the essence of the opening part of the bracha? Good, that was the machlokes. So we'll say Gufa. So we'll say, let's spend a little bit of time on Havdalah now. Gufa, Amr Belazar, Amr Boshia. Hapoches lo yivchos mishalosh, v'amosif lo yosef al sheva. So we'll say, so remember again, when Rabba was making Havdalah, so comes along Rav Huna Bar Yehuda and says to Rava, why are you doing all of these Havdalahs? To which Rava said, because Rabbi Elazar said in Rabbi Oshia, we're making Havdalah, don't say less than 3 Havdalahs and don't say more than 7 Havdalahs. So we'll say, let's analyze. Meisvei, so there is a kasha. Omer Havdalahs b'matzei Shabbos matzei Yom Tovim. You go ahead and you make Havdalah matzei Shabbos matzei Yom Tov. Or b'matzei Yom Kippurim, or b'matzei Shabbos liyom Tov, or b'matzei Yom Tov l'chol al shamoid. Aval lo b'matzei Yom Tov l'Shabbos. So we'll say, so remember again, you make Havdalah on all of these times. Matzei Shabbos, matzei Yom Tov into Chalamoid, matzei Yom Kippur. The one time you don't make Havdalah is when? Yom Tov going into Shabbos. That's the one time you don't make Havdalah. No Havdalah when Yom Tov goes into Shabbos. So we'll say, take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. So the Rashbam says, Avalo b'matzah Yom Tov l'Shabbos. It's in the shorter lines. Da'afaruchus yotzei v'hamelech nichna. So we'll say the Rashbam references back to the mashal we gave 2 days ago, right? Remember again, what was the mashal? When trying to figure out in our Yaknahaz discussion, what should come first? Right, Kiddush or Havdalah. So the side that said Havdalah was because, again, remember, escort out the king before you go ahead and you welcome in the the duke. Thank you, the duke. Right, before you welcome in the other nobleman. So here the Rashbam says something very interesting. We don't make Havdalah going from Yom Tov into Shabbos. Even though I will say again, remember, there are 2 different Kedushos. Very important, 2 different Kedushos. Yeah, we don't do it. Rashbam says, because they'll say, what does that mean when Yom Tov goes into Shabbos? When Yom Tov goes into Shabbos, the duke is leaving, and the king is coming. Therefore, he says, Ein derech lalavos hafarchos shakolim shachan achar melech. So we'll say, when the duke is leaving and the king is coming, no one really escorts the Duke out. Why not? Because everyone is preoccupied with the arrival of the king. So Sotu says, the Gemara, when Yom Tov goes into Shabbos, we don't go ahead and escort Yom Tov out because the focus is on Shabbos, which is really quite fascinating. I just want to tell you, like, on the flip side, it's this Yom Tov Shabbos dynamic is quite fascinating. For example, when Yom Tov goes into Shabbos, we don't say a regular Kabbalah Shabbos, as we know. We say a truncated form of Kabbalah Shabbos. So Rabbi Soloveitchik explains very beautifully that the yesod of it is as follows. Shabbos is a concept of when we go out to greet the Ribono Shel Olam, right? And he says that when the dynamic of Yom Tiv is a dynamic of Aliyah L'Regel. That ultimately, again, we go up to the Beis Hamikdash, and even on a Ruchni level, ultimately a person has elevated themselves. That sometimes when you're in that state of elevation, you're there already. You're there already. So the concept of Kabbalah Shabbos, right? Boi b'shalom, right? Going out, you don't have to go anywhere because you're already there. So the notion that even though the Kedusha of Shabbos is greater than the Kedusha of Yom Tov, but when Yom Tov goes into Shabbos, that amplifies the Shabbos dynamic as well. Hence the absence of Kabbalah Shabbos. There's not a need for that level of preparatory activity. In any event, but from a Havdalah perspective, Havdalah is only made when you're going either from Kodesh to Chol, or when you're going, interestingly enough, from more Kodesh to less Kodesh. But when you're going from Kodesh to more Kodesh, there is no Havdalah. Haragil Omer Harbe, V'Hashein Ragil Omer Achas. If you are eloquent, Ragil, if you're eloquent, you can say a lot of Havdalahs. If you're not eloquent, you only have to say one. Right, like we saw before. So we'll say, so how does this stem with what we said before? Because before, Rav quoted the opinion that said that you can't say less than 3 havdalas, and you shouldn't say more than 7 havdalas. Here the Gemara seems to indicate that you could even get away with saying 1 havdalah. That's it. So which one is it? So Tanai. So we'll say it's machlokes Tanaim. There's a machlokes about the proper structure of havdalah. Damar Rabbi Yochanan. Benan Shel Kedoshim Omer. So Rabbi Yochanan said, the son of the holy ones said, Achos. He only used to say one statement. Rashi says, you say only one statement. But everyone else used to make 3 statements as part of their Havdalah. So Gemara says, by the way, Man Nihu Benan Shel Kedoshim. Who is this person? I will say, we've never seen this before. Someone in the Gemara is identified. His name, he's known as the son of the holy ones. We'll say, who is the son of the holy ones? Rabbi Menachem Bar Simoi. Rabbi Menachem Bar Simoi. Why is he called Rabbi Menachem Bar Simoi? Va'amai karule benan shel kedoshim delo istakil b'tzursa dezuza. Because he was so holy that he would not even look at the image on a coin. On the image on a coin. So we'll say, so this is actually really quite interesting. So what does this mean? So we'll say, so b'pashtos, what it means is that it could be that he had such an overwhelming concern for Avodah Zarah, to avoid anything that would look like worship, idolatrous worship, he would not even look at the form on a coin. But we'll say what it could also mean on a deeper level is that he was incredibly careful with Shmiras Ha'inayim, with what he looked at. Incredibly careful with general Shmiras Ha'inayim. And I will say, in that respect, it makes sense that it also calls him Binan Shel Kedoshim, because that's a strange. Why didn't it just call him Kadosh? What is Binan Shel Kedoshim? So we'll say maybe he's the son of the pasuk of Kedoshim Tiyu. And again, what's the whole yisod? What does Rashi say about Kedoshim Tiyu? Shu Gidurim Min Arayos. Moral purity. Moral purity. So how do you become a son of Parshas Kedoshim? How do you become a son of Kedoshim Tiyu? Ultimately, again, when a person is careful with their morality. And the first step in being careful with our morality is our Shmiras Ha'inayim, which is one of the most incredibly hard things. Just to be careful with what we look at and what we gaze at and what we allow ourselves to be drawn into. Because we all know, although one could easily justify, as we often do, that looking is not a Maisa Avera, but looking is the gateway Avera. It's the gateway Avera. And I know that even if I look at something inappropriate, it changes everything. It just changes everything. I'm a different person. My day is different. Everything about me becomes different. So how do you become Binan Shel Kedoshim? How do I become the son of Parshas Kedoshim, the son of Kedoshim Tiyu? The lo istakel b'tzursa. He didn't even look at an image. Again, in this case, it's the image on the coin. What a powerful yisod. Not even to look at the images. Not even to look at the images. If I'm able to go ahead and exercise that level of self-restraint, then I become Binan Shel Kedoshim. Shalach le Rav Shmuel bar Idi. Chananya achi omer achos v'las hilchos sakavase. So this is Shmuel bar Idi says, Chananya, my brother, says, all you have to do for Havdalah is say one statement. But no one ever listens to my brother, right? Who listens, right? So again, the halacha is not like him. By the way, I just want to point out, see what's interesting about these sugyas are, we know already how this works, right? So we know in fact they're both right. We know that essentially we adopt the Havdalah of Rava. So remember, as I mentioned before, the Havdalah of Rava is as you said, but we also know that halacha l'maisa, if you have to do malacha before you go ahead and make Havdalah ala kos, what do you do? Baruch hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. So interestingly enough, we adopt the one line Havdalah as like the break in case of emergency. I need to go home. Now, obviously, if I'm driving home from Ma'ariv, I've already said Atah Chanantanu, so that satisfies Havdalah. But let's say I forgot Atah Chanantanu, which happens sometimes. Yes, just happens, right? I'm lost in my kavanah with the rest of Shemona Esrei of Ma'ariv, which is for Klal Yisrael one of the most heartfelt tefillos. It's incredible how much kavanah goes into Ma'ariv Shabbos. Let's say so again. I forgot Atah Chanantanu. I want to drive home. So now again, I could say Baruch Hamavdil Beikol V'Shechol. Now obviously there's still a din of Havdalah ala kos, just like on Friday night. If when you say Kiddush and Shul Vayechulu, you have discharged biblical Kiddush, but you still need rabbinic Kiddush ala kos. So I could discharge the biblical obligation, because there is a biblical obligation for Havdalah. I could discharge that with Atah Chanantanu or with Baruch HaMavdil, but I still have to go and make Kiddush ala kos. So we adopt both opinions. Well, so let's go weiter. Amar B'Shua ben Levi, HaMavdil, Tzar Shomer Me'ein Havdalah Samuras V'Torah. Both this is beautiful. Yehoshua ben Levi says, when you make Havdalah, you have to use, so what we've seen is that as part of Havdalah, you're going to include statements of, Havdalah includes statements of Havdalah, right? Meaning the bracha of Havdalah, of distinguishing between Shabbos and the weekday, the way I make Havdalah is by including statements of Havdalah. That's what Rava said. Hamavdil ben kol l'shechol, ben or lechoshech, ben Yisrael la'amim. So now the Gemara just says that when you go ahead, Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi says that you have to use statements of Havdalah that are found in the Torah. In other words, you take examples of where the Torah creates a contrast, the Havdalah distinguishing between things, and that becomes your Havdalah. So may say, the Gemara says, say the Havdalah is Heich Omer. What's the proper Seder of Havdalah? Here we go. Here are your options. Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, ben Or L'choshech, ben Yisrael La'amim, ben Yom HaShidish Sheishes Mi'amasa, ben Tamei L'Tahar, ben Hayom L'Charava. Bein Mayim Al Yonam, so we'll say so again. So all of those we understand. Bein Hayom L'Charava, between the sea and the dry land. Bein Mayim Al Yonam Mayim Tachtonim, between the upper waters and the lower waters. Bein Kohanim LeLeviim v'Yisraelim, between Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. V'Choseim B'Seider Bereishis. And ultimately, how should you conclude Havdalah? So the Rashbam says, this is incredible. V'Choseim B'Seider Bereishis, the second last short line. Baruch Soder Bereshis. This is beautiful. How do you conclude Havdalah with the statement? Baruch Ato Hashem, blessed Hashem, Soder Bereshis, the one who organizes creation. Sheba Matzeh Shabbos, Hischila Kadosh Baruch Hu L'Sader Ma'aseh Bereshis. We often don't think about this, right? But when did Ma'aseh Bereshis begin? So this is fascinating. Ma'aseh Bereshis began Matzeh Shabbos. Right? We normally think about, again, Yom Rishon. I don't know, I often think about Yom Rishon is like Sunday morning. No, says Rasham, Ma'aseh Bereshis began Matzeh Shabbos, which really, by the way, is such an incredible yisod. The Ribono Shel Olam began creating his world on Matzeh Shabbos. And this goes back to what we mentioned yesterday about the fact that the Besamim comes before the Ner. When I make Havdalah, I am mekal upon myself. I am going to build my world this week. So remember, I have the Besamim. The Besamim is a spiritual awakening. I want to do something great. I have machshava. Even though normally Maisa comes before machshava, on Matzei Shabbos, I mekabel al atzmi to build something beautiful this week. So the Besamim are there to be ma'orer my neshama, and then I light the ner. Then I make the bracha on the ner of dynamic activity. And what I'm doing is, I'm modeling myself after my father. That my father began creating the world. Kadosh Baruch Hu began creating the world on Matzei Shabbos. I pledge to begin to create my world this week on Matzei Shabbos as well. It's incredible. V'choseim b'sei d'bereshis. He goes on, v'achirim omrim, biyotzer bereshis. Others say, no. It's not so der bereshis. It's not he who organizes creation, but rather it's he who creates creation. Right? Biyotzer bereshis, or began to create in the beginning. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Omer, Chose Mekadesh Yisrael. No, the proper ending actually is Mekadesh Yisrael. So we'll say, so this is actually quite beautiful. If we look at the Rashbam over here, so it's about 4 lines in the wide lines. Rashbam says, Mekadesh Yisrael, Mikol Olamo Shiyatzer Lo Kiddush Eli Yisrael. So it's actually very beautiful that why would you end off Havdalah of Mekadesh Yisrael? Because also at the end of the day, as I enter into the new week, I want to know what my mandate is, right? Well, what am I supposed to accomplish? Mekadesh Yisrael, Kadosh Baruch Hu sanctified me. And if Kadosh Baruch Hu sanctified me, He sanctified us, that means it's my job to bring more Kedusha into this world. I will say, what you begin to see is something really amazing. That Havdalah is not simply a way of actually distinguishing between Shabbos and weekday. Meaning that kind of happens memela to a certain degree. You could accomplish that with Baruch HaMavda ben Kodesh Shachol. Havdalah is like divrei chizuk. It's the way we go ahead and we're mechazik ourselves to go into the world and to do something great in the coming week. It's a chizik to go ahead and say, I have a new week ahead of me. Tonight is when the Ribono Shalom began to create His world, and tonight is when I'm going to begin to create my week. It's like a chizik session before I embrace the new week to accomplish something great. It's so incredible. The Misa, so both says, if this is true, that all of the Havdalahs we say have to be from Havdalahs found in the Torah, so everything we mentioned in that list works. So we'll say the statement of between the sea and the earth, right, the sea and the land, we don't find the pasuk that references that in the Torah. So it says the Gemara, you're right. Yeah, take that off. Strike that, right? Take that one off from the list. That doesn't belong there. But if that's the case, then ultimately, again, if you remove that one, and then if also you have to remove Yom HaShvi'i, l'sheish tzibei not remove it just, that doesn't really count as part of the tally, because as we said before, that's their why, because we need a concluding phrase which captures the sentiment of the concluding bracha, which means it doesn't count towards the tally of Havdalus. If that's the case, the Gemara says, Batzar Chadav Aleka Sheva. Now I no longer have 7 Havdalahs, only 6. The Rabbi say we're always assuming that either you should have 3 or you should have 7, but nothing in between. So now I only have 6. To which the Rabbi says is incredible. Emri Kohanim Levim v'Yisraelim Trei Milin Inhu. The statement of distinguishing between Kohanim, Levim Yisraelim is not one statement, but it's 2. How so? Bein Levim Yisraelim Dichsev, because there's 2 acts of distinguishing, 2 acts of Havdalah. Number 1, between Levim and Yisraelim Dichsev, Ba'isahi Hivdil Hashem Shevet HaLevi, Bein Kohanim Levim Dichsev, Bnei Amram Aaron Umoshe, Vayavdil Aaron Laktisho Kodesh Kadoshim. So we'll say that statement that between Kohanim, Levim, and Yisraelim is in fact 2 different Havdalahs. There's a Havdalah between Levim and Yisraelim, and then there's a Havdalah ben Kohanim to Levium. Beautiful, that gives you 7. So Mechta Mai Chasim, what's the concluding bracha of Havdalah? What's the concluding bracha? Rav Amar Mekadesh Yisrael. Rav says the concluding bracha is Mekadesh Yisrael, but as we said before, because the concluding bracha of Havdalah is the Ribono Shel Olam vested us with Kedusha. Havdalah is the Divrei Hisorus for the week ahead. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave you Kedusha. Now go and do something with it. Now go and be great. Now go and bring your Kedusha into the world. Shmuel Amar, Hamavdui Kodesh Shechol. And Shmuel said, no, the concluding bracha of Havdalah is Baruch Ato Hashem hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. That is the essence. Says the Gemara, Layit ale Abaye v'tim Rav Yosef ahad Rav. So we'll say, so Abaye did not like Rav's statement. Layit literally means curse, but it doesn't have to mean curse. It just means he dismissed it. He did not like Rav's conclusion. Mekadesh Yisrael is not the right conclusion, but rather we adopt Shmuel's position of hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. So we'll say, isn't how beautiful this is? Tana mishmid Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. We'll say, this is incredible. There was a statement of Rabbi Shimon Chananya, Kol hachose mekadesh Yisrael, v'hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. So we'll say this is actually very interesting. So Rabbi Shimon Chananya has an interesting approach. He says, why does it have to be either or? Let's just go ahead and adopt both of them. If you conclude Havdalah with the bracha, Baruch Ato Hashem, mekadesh Yisrael, v'hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, ma'arichin lo yamav ushnosav. Such a person, I will say, enjoys incredible longevity, prolonged days and years. Then I will say, we don't adopt this position. Oh, the Gemara says, "V'les hilchasa kavase amud beis." The halacha does not follow this. So I will say, now I want to point out, the halacha doesn't follow this because of a technicality. The technicality is a concluding bracha of what we call a bracha arichta. The concluding bracha of any long bracha cannot have two themes. Cannot have two themes. Brachas are always limited thematically to one theme. So that's why we reject this, although it's great. It's so, what a beautiful bracha. Incredible. But at the end of the day, you cannot have two themes in a concluding bracha. And I will say, now again, remember, if you have like Kiddush of Shabbos Yom Tiv, you could have Shabbos and Yom Tiv together. That's not two themes. That's reflective of the 2 days that are occurring simultaneously. But also remember again, we've already seen, just like we've seen Kiddush and Havdalah, same thing with Kiddush and Havdalah, Chad Kiddushi, Shabbos and Yom Tov, when they occur together, also there's a certain level of merged Kedusha. That's not two themes. But halacha l'maaseh again, Mekadesh Yisrael, Mavdil ben kodesh l'chol. You look at that, and we'll say, what do they have to do with each other? What do they have to do with each other? So if you want to be a darshan, you could find some beautiful way for them to do with each other. But Bepashtas, they're two different ideas. Mekadesh Yisrael and Amavdil ben kodesh l'chol, two different themes. Therefore, less haluchas hakavase. But I will say, it is very intriguing. This, even if we don't adopt it lahalacha, I will say this statement is a very dramatic one, right? So here you have Rabbi Shimon Chananya saying, if you conclude your Havdalah with the bracha of Mekadesh Yisrael v'Amavdil ben kodesh l'chol ma'arichin lo yamav ushnosav. That is the bracha for longevity. So I'll say, so what's the pshat with that? So perhaps what Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya is saying is as follows. If you take a look at these two phrases, they really refer to two different things. The concept of Mekadesh Yisrael is perhaps what we could call a Kedusha Enoshis. Right? A Kedusha Enoshis means a conferred Kedusha. Mekadesh Yisrael means that Ribono Shel Olam confers Kedusha upon me. It has nothing to do with what I did. Nothing to do with anything I've accomplished. It just has to do with who I am. The Ribono Shel Olam gives us this almost like inherited Kedusha, this vested Kedusha, this innate Kedusha. That's Mekadesh Yisrael. And in fact, again, if you take, the Rashbam, I think this is really what the Rashbam is saying, what we saw before. Versus Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. They will say, what's the ability to be Mavdil ben kodesh l'chol? That's perhaps what we could call a Kedusha Atzmis. That's your own Kedusha. That's your own Kedusha. The ability to go into the world and the ability to go into life and be Mavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. To say, this is Kodesh, this is Chol, this is Mutter, this is Aser, this is what I should do, and this is what I should avoid. Represent the two Kedushas of the Jew. So again, Mekadesh Yisrael is conferred holiness. What we could perhaps call Kedusha Enoshis. Conferred Kedusha. Nothing that I do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to me. But the ability to be a Mavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. The ability then to develop my own personalistic Kedusha Atzmis. That my own Kedusha that I generate by making good decisions. By taking the Kodesh, leaving aside the Chol. By drawing a line between that which is Mutter, that which is Aser. And living a life of Kedusha. That's how I develop my own personalistic Kedusha. So perhaps what Rabbi Shimon Chananya is saying about say, a person who lives a life that is a synthesis of these two ideas. Of number one, Mekadesh Yisrael, I appreciate my conferred holiness, but I develop my personalistic holiness by being Mavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. Such a person, Ma'arichin lo yamav ushnosav. But whenever Chazal speak about Ma'arichel and Yom Shnosav, lav dafka that is talking about prolonging of biological life. What that means in the eyes of Chazal is cultivation of a meaningful life. Everyone wants meaning in life. So how do I find it? Well, at least Rabbi Yishmael ben Chananya suggests appreciate your conferred holiness. Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. Excuse me, Mikadesh Yisrael. Cultivate your personalistic Kiddusha Atzmis, your personal Kiddusha, Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. You appreciate those two things, work on those two things in life, Ma'arichin l'yom avushnosav. That is the secret to successful, meaningful living. So the Gemara goes weiter. Ula ikla lepumpadisa. I'm going to say this is great. Ula went to Pumpadisa. Another great, let's say this, I don't even know what to say. It's like, it is such a schus to be able to learn these Gemaras, right? I have to say, I'm so touched by the messages that I get from so many of you, and from even our listeners beyond, the appreciation of this Gemara, right? I just want to point out that the darga that it is just to fall in love with a piece of Gemara and to be excited with a piece of Gemara. For so many of us, we didn't necessarily experience those type of feelings growing up, right? When we were learning, right? Because learning was something you had to do. But the beauty of learning as an adult, first of all, when you come of your own volition, at least most of you, right? So right? And you're here because you want to be here. You mamish fall in love with Torah. You fall in love with Torah. Like if somebody were to ask you, if you could be anywhere right now, where would you be? Okay, so if the Beis Medrash could be moved to Eretz Yisrael, that would be incredible. But aside from that, nowhere else. Nowhere else I'd ever want to be except here with Pesachim, Daf Kuf Dalet Amud Beis. Rebbeinu Shalom, thank you for this beautiful Torah. So the Gemara says, Ula ikla Pumpadisa. Ula went to Pumpadisa. Amar lehu. Amar lei Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yitzchak Rebbe. What's that great Gemara? So Ula went to Pumpadisa. So Rabbi Yehuda said to Rabbi Yitzchak, his son, Zil imti leika kala depeira. We'll say this is great. So what happens? So Ula came to Pumpadisa. When he arrived, Rabbi Yehuda, and the Rashbam points out over here, maybe it's Rashi. Okay, we'll get to it. Anyway, so the Gemara Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says to Rabbi Yitzchak, his son, Zil amti leika kala deperi. Do me a favor. Go and take Ula a basket of fruit. A basket of fruit. V'chazi hechi avdil. Now both say, now listen to this. So Rabbi Yehuda was saying to his son Rabbi Yitzchak, go bring Ula a basket of fruit. Not because he wanted to deliver, shalach manas to Ula, but rather, again, he wanted his son Rabbi Yitzchak to observe how Ula made Havdalah. I want to see how Ula makes Havdalah. Maybe it's true just to show up at someone's house and to say, here, I'm here to see how you make Havdalah. Bring him a basket of fruit. Go ahead and see how you made Havdalah. So I'll say, now watch this. Rabbi Yitzchak, so the Gemara says, hey, lo azil. So Rabbi Yitzchak didn't go. He didn't go himself. So Shadr leila Abaye. So he sent Abaye instead. So again, Abba says, so just to follow the names, Rabbi Yehuda says to his son Rabbi Yitzchak, go to the house of Ula and see how Ula makes Havdalah. Bring him a basket of fruit. Rabbi Yitzchak says, okay, whatever, he's not going. He sends Abaye, gives him the basket of fruit. You go to the house of Ula, see how Ula makes Havdalah. Ki asa, so what happens? So Abaye went, he came back, comes to Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar lehechi Amar. So he said, so Abaye comes back to Rabbi Yitzchak, so Rabbi Yitzchak says, no, how did Ula make Havdalah? Amar lehechi Amar le, Baruch Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. Amar Visulo. All Ula said for Havdalah was Baruch Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. That's it. So what happens? Well, now watch this. So now Rabbi Yitzchak goes back to his father Rabbi Yehuda and says, Father, Amar lehechi Amar. So now what happens? Rabbi Yitzchak walks in the tata. So Rabbi Yehuda says, no, my son. So now you're back. Tell me, what did Ula do for Havdalah? So Amar le ana lo azli, said, Father, I didn't go myself, but however, shadarti la Abaye. I sent Abaye a basket of fruit and everything. Abaye came back and he reported to me, Amar le amavdil ben kodesh l'chol. And ultimately, again, he reported back to me and he said that Ula sent an Havdalah amavdil ben kodesh l'chol. So Rabbi Yehuda the father gets very upset. Amar le Rav Revenu say demar v'sarsaru say demar garme lamar delotemat shmaite mipumei. So you know what? So Rabbi Yehuda essentially says to his son Rabbi Yitzchak, I didn't know you're such a great Rav that you can't do what I ask you to do. Right? Rav Renu say demar, you're such a great Rav. You're not going to say, you're so important. right? Rav Nusay Demar, his master's greatness. So we'll say, what a little bit of not a little bit of a shtach, a pretty big shtach. The father is referring to his son in the third person, right? The Rav is so great. The Rav is so great that he was unable to go ahead and go himself, right? And his dominion over others is so great that he could go ahead and send others to go ahead and, carry out the shlichos that his father asked. And as a result of that, as a result of your perceived greatness, that you couldn't do what I asked of you, listen to this, Garma le lamar delotema shmaitim upumei. This statement will never be said over in your name. We'll say, what does this mean? Take a look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam says in the wide lines, the fifth wide line, V'lo tigmar shmaisei mipumei, Rab Yitzchak. They both say, forever, when the halacha is reported over, what Ula did for Havdalah, in whose name will the ruling be stated? In the name of Abaye. Why? Because Abaye is the one who went to observe Ula. So Rabbi Yehuda says to his son Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak, do you understand? Had you gone and reported back, forever, the statement of what Ula's practice would have been related in your name. But because you went ahead and you sent Abaye, therefore it's going to be said over in Abaye's name. Look what the Rashi will say. This is so profound. And the Gemara Mesechus Yevamos says, Kol Talmid Chacham she'omrim davar shmua mipiv, sifsosav dovavos bekever. Sifsosav will say, when a Talmid Chacham dies, but then people go ahead and say over halacha in his name or Torah in his name, the deceased Talmid Chacham, his lips move in the grave. The idea being that when you're gone, if people say over Torah in your name, that gives you eternality. That gives you eternality. So Rav Yehuda says to his son Rav Yitzchak, had you gone, you would have come back, said Ula says for Havdalah Mabdal ben Kol V'Shlachol, and forever it would have, the Gemara would have read, Amar Rav Yitzchak, right? B'Sh'ula Amar Baruch HaMabdal ben Kol V'Shlachol V'Sulo. But now that you sent Abaye, forever it will be recorded in his name and not yours. I will say now there's a number of interesting things. So Rav Reuven Bengis in his commentary in the Gemara over here brings down, he says, I don't understand, how is it that Rav Yitzchak did not fulfill Kibbut Avein? Kibbut Av. In other words, his father told him to do something and he didn't do it. So you see from here something amazing. He quotes the idea that it's possible that Midda Oraisa, the din of Kibbut Av, only applies when a father asks for something for himself. So if my father asks me to get him a cup of tea, then ultimately, again, the mitzvah is upon me. If he asks me to do something for the father, then physically for the father, that's the biblical mitzvah of Kibbut Av. But if my father asks me to do something that is not for my father, then although there may be some concept of Kibbut Av, perhaps that's not the biblical Kibbut Av. So Shabbos say makes sense because when the Gemara, makes sense. I'm not commenting, of course, it makes sense. But the idea being that if you look in the Gemara, Mesechus Kedushin brings up the discussion about Kibbut Av. So the Gemara, when it discusses Kibbut Av, discusses things that you do for your father. Right? That's the way it's framed. There might be an ancillary concept of doing something my parent asks me, but it's also that biblical Kibbut Av is doing something for your father. We'll say, but again, the Musar Haskell from this is incredible. Two, I think, incredible lessons. Lesson number one, I will say that you better make sure to leave behind some Torah for your children, right? And for future generations. Because at the end of the day, that's the part that gives you eternality. It's the Torah you leave behind that causes your lips to move in the kever. And Torah, by the way, doesn't have to necessarily be a shtickle Torah. It's not the pshat, my father used to say this pshat in Rashi. It doesn't have to be like that. But the ruchni inheritance you give to your children, right? We're coming up on Pesach, and what every single parent wants more than anything is that when you're gone, what you want is for your future generations to sit at the Seder table and to say, my father used to do it like this. Or my father, he said the same Devar Torah every single time at the Seder. Or he always sang that ridiculously off-tune key, off-tune for a halach manya, for whatever it is. That's how you want, not, my father was usually asleep by the third course. Yeah, that was him, right? Or when we finished the meal, the rest of the Seder took about 3.3 minutes. That's not the Yerusha. That's not the Yerusha. Sifsosav dovavos bekever. If you want your lips to move in the kever, if you want eternality comes ultimately again through leaving a Yerusha of Torah for your children. A Yerusha Ruchni is Yerusha Torah. But the obvious other lesson is, in life, sometimes things come up, and we love to delegate. We love to delegate, right? You do this, you do this, you do that. We'll say sometimes when something is important enough in life, do it yourself. Don't look to delegate. Don't look to offload. I'm sure, I want to be clear, the Gemara doesn't tell us, but I'm sure Rabbi Yitzchak had very good reasons why he did not go himself. I'm sure there were good reasons. But Lamaisa, your father sends you on a mission to go ahead and figure out what the halach is, you go. You go. Don't try to offload. Don't try to delegate. Ultimately, again, just simply do what you are obligated to do. An incredible yisod. We miss out on so many beautiful opportunities because we're looking for someone else to do this, someone else to do that. You delegate to this, you do that. When something has to get done in life, roll up your sleeves and get the job done. An incredible yisod. The Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Beisvei, kolabrachas kulan poseach bebaruch v'chosei membaruch chutz mi berchas mitzvah so berchas v'as. So now let's analyze this a little bit. So the Gemara now is going to go ahead and launch into a more exhaustive discussion regarding brachas. So in general, all brachas open up with baruch and end with baruch, except we'll say it's always great in the Gemara. All brachas, right? All brachas have the same rule, except what? The ones that don't, right? So every single bracha opens with baruch and ends with baruch, except chutz mi berchas mitzvos. So we'll say again, we understand the berchas mitzvos is, Asher yikshom himself v'tzivanu la'aniach tefillin. There's an opening bracha, right? There's a baruch in the beginning. There's not a baruch in the end. Berchas haperos, like berchos hanenin, bari priya eitz, bari priya adama, right? Bracha hasmucha lechaverta, or a bracha that is juxtaposed to another bracha, like berchos kriyashma, right? Berchos Kriyashma, the bracha of Yotzar Ma'oros, comes right before Avarabba, which is why Avarabba doesn't open up with a bracha. Right? Avarabba just opens up with Avarabba. That's brachas mucha lechaverta. Ubrachas achronisha b'kriyashma. Same thing are the brachos after Shema, right? The two brachos after Shema. Sheyesh men poseach sheyesh mehen poseach bebaruch and chosim bebaruch. There are some brachas that begin with baruch, don't conclude with baruch. V'yesh chosim bebaruch vein poseach bebaruch. Some ultimately end with baruch, don't begin with baruch. V'atov ha'metiv poseach bebaruch vein chosim bebaruch. But ultimately, again, atov ha'metiv opens with baruch, doesn't have baruch. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to stop over here. We're going to see, we'll repeat this price tomorrow, but we're going to see is that the Gemara is building up to a kasha on Ula. Because it appears that all that Ula did for Avdallah was Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol, and structurally, again, the fact that he only made one Havdalah, one statement of distinguishing, that's one issue. But the fact that there's only one Baruch in there, that's bothersome to the Gemara. And Meretz Hashem, we will continue tomorrow. I'll say Yeshikayach. Chevron Zoom, everyone have a wonderful day. Great to see everyone.